En este episodio vamos a revisar una película de España. Mira, subtítulos. Hello and welcome to Sci-Fi-Night. I'm your host, Sebastian Vendel Martinez, and this is the show where we check out some of the lesser-known sci-fi and horror films out there and let you know what to expect from them. So, in this episode, we're checking out our first, but definitely not last, Spanish sci-fi/horror film. Los Ultimos Dias, or The Last Days for all you gringos out there, is a Spanish sci-fi thriller from 2013 directed by the brothers David and Alex Pastor, who have also directed sci-fi horror films like Carriers and Out of the Dark. Los Ultimos Dias is set in the beautiful city of Barcelona, which becomes substantially less beautiful and more post-apocalyptic and trashy as the film goes along. The film follows Mark, who is trying to survive in this post-apocalyptic world. However, we get told how he got here through flashbacks, which show Mark stuck at a dead-end office job working for a boss he hates called Enrique.
Debería estar a fin de mes.
Debería estar. O estará.
Estará.
Aw man, I sure know where Mark is coming from. Seriously, screw Enrique, bring on the apocalypse, and screw that job. However, Mark's drawn-out daily routine changes when people start sporadically developing agoraphobia, or fear of going outside. People start barricading themselves inside and going appropriately crazy. The actual breakdown of society occurs while Mark is away from home, leaving him on a quest to get back to his girlfriend Julia. The boss he once hated ends up becoming his only friend in this world filled with anxiety and panic.
¡Hijo de puta! Hijo de puta con palabras.
Alright, so let's face it, we've all seen plenty of post-apocalyptic movies before, but this one is actually a little bit different, a little bit cleaner, and a little bit more European. The shift from the post-apocalyptic current times and the flashbacks is a little unclear and shaky for my tastes, and I could have done without it in favor of more linear storytelling. I mean, it's hardly incomprehensible, but you might not want to be on your fourth glass of wine like I was when I watched this to make sure you don't get caught off guard by the leaps in the timeline. Also, the world has just very recently become apocalyptic. People become barricaded in the buildings or apartments that they were in when the panic hit, and depending on what kind of building they're stuck in, the fate of those survivors can look very different. The way that this recently broken down society works is very cool, and while the reason for this might seem a little silly the more you think about it, the film chooses to follow the way this world works instead of how it got started. So like I said, it's a little bit silly when you think about it, but even so, agoraphobia is a real thing like fear of going outside. So think of it as kind of like a world made up solely of World of Warcraft nerds that are all stuck in the basement. The actors do a good job in pairing up a disgruntled worker with a boss he once hated in this post-apocalyptic scenarios is actually pretty fun as you see them start to move past their former roles at the job and become friends depending on one another.
Ahora es cuando te largas, ¿no?
Tú y yo tenemos un trato. Y no necesitamos más enemigos.
Mark and Enrique must survive while trying to find Julia, that is, if she hasn't been killed yet. So like I said, this isn't your run-of-the-mill post-apocalyptic movie because it's not really super extravagant and more toned down and realistic. Think something more along the lines of Blindness, Children of Men, and The Road, and less S&M outfits and death fights like in, for example, Escape from New York. Also, it should be mentioned that this film only had a budget of 5 million euros, which is decent for a European film, but fucking nothing compared to most major American releases. I mean, that piece of shit, the Smurfs film, costed $110 million to make.
Whoa, is there a draft in here?
Nothing like a cool breeze through my enchanted forest.
What the fuck is this?
Despite this, I never once thought about the budget or felt that anything looked cheap. which is obviously a great sign. Pretty much everything looks and is shot pretty nicely. However, the film does suffer from some minor cliches towards the end that make the film feel a little bit less original, but overall I'd say this was a pleasant surprise. Alright, so you guys know the drill. What should you expect from this movie? Awesome atmosphere. The visual effects, cinematography, and overall look and feel of this film is just great. It truly feels like the world was just recently hit by an epidemic and we're all just dragged along on this journey. There are tons of nice shots, the score is very good and also very fitting for this type of film, even if it is a little minimal. Emotional sci-fi drama. I don't know what I was expecting, but this sure was a much better quality film than I thought it would be. The tension, panic, sense of isolation, and Mark's sorrow and longing for his girlfriend are all themes that are conveyed very well. Sure, this film is about the end of the world, but it's the characters and their emotions that take the center stage. We feel for Mark and his struggle becomes our struggle. Overall, this is a character-driven film that accomplishes pretty much everything it sets out to do.
Le has dado. No sé cómo, pero le has dado, tío.
A different apocalypse. Maybe it's the Spanish European twist, the very different origins of this apocalypse, or that there's not as much violence as is usually seen in this kind of films, but either way, this kind of feels like a nice fresh breeze in the genre. The film has a few things to say on our overdependence on technology and how we're alienating ourselves socially in favor of contact via social media. There are a few action scenes with barbarian scavengers, but this is hardly an action film. This is a hardcore, character-driven sci-fi drama with enough interesting kinks to make an otherwise overdone concept seem fresh.
Descripción de un caso de histeria colectiva. ¿Cómo se explica si no que la expansión de la enfermedad sea completamente aleatoria? No se ha encontrado ningún patrón en la evidencia.
Alright, so I'll admit that the first half of the film works slightly better than the second, but I'd say that the surprisingly satisfying ending is enough to make up for some minor cliches. Yeah, I don't really want to give too much else away, but I'd highly recommend this film to anyone who likes the European or more toned down sci-fi films, post-apocalyptic stuff, or a nice character-driven story set in a unique but deadly environment. It's got flaws. I mean, of course, it might be a bit slow for some who want more action, but if you set your sights on some thought-provoking and sleek sci-fi, then you sure as hell won't be disappointed. So that about does it for this episode of Sci-Fi-Night. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, you should let us know what you think of the film Los Ultimos Dias in the comments below, as well as what you thought of this episode, and suggestions for future films to bring up in other episodes. As always, I'm your host, Sebastian Metal Martinez, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Mira, ¿te gusta?
Me parece terrorífica.